Hello and welcome to Quarterlight, your car brochure channel, and in today's episode, the range-topping Holden Statesman. Welcome back, and if you're new to Quarterlight, we're a car brochure channel looking at car brochures from around the world for the 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s and sometimes beyond that as well. So if you're interested in cars, car knowledge, car brochures, please consider subscribing. It is completely free. Anyway, back to today's episode. We've been having a look at a 1979 full range Holden brochure. This is kind of like bringing us to the end of this particular series because we're now at the top of the range model, the Holden Statesman. So let's have a look at that one now. So on this our little journey looking at this Holden brochure from 79, we started off with the smaller Holdens, which very much reminded us of Vauxhalls and Opels in Europe, which obviously they were very much related to. Then we got to the Kingswood, and the Holden Kingswood was the HZ, and the Holden Premier. They were very much more of sort of American styling. You can almost give them a complete different make, and it looks so radically different from the European relations. Now, when we get to these more American styled Holdens, I start losing a bit of memories, losing a bit of relationship to our European cars, but I still find them very fascinating. I don't know much about them though, because obviously I've never really owned them or even seen one in the flesh actually, so I've been asking for a little bit of help from those in Australia and New Zealand to fill in the gaps, so to speak, and they certainly have. Very knowledgeable viewers out there, and I've really enjoyed your lengthy comments and learning a bit more about these cars. Anyway, the Statesman, very much related to the Kingswood. You really can't mistake that at all when you look at the two of them, but I think a little bit more luxury, and certainly a luxurious car for 1979. Let's just zoom in on the main image. So there is our Statesman. This particular Statesman is looking like the top of the range one, the Caprice. And if I just flip back to the Kingswood, the HZ Holdens, they've got what you want, as it describes them as. Kingswood with the single lights, and then these fancier Premiers with the twin lights. You can certainly see how they're related. Anyway, let's move back to our Statesman. But then we look back at the Statesman and this top of the range Caprice. You can appreciate how much more little bits and pieces they've actually got on them, and I don't know how much more the Statesman was towards it, for example a Kingswood, but I would imagine it would have been a fair bit. Love the big chrome bumpers, and look at the size of these overriders, absolutely huge. And then we can see how the grille goes right down to the bottom there, and we've even got a little bit of an emblem on there, kind of like think Cadillac, I guess. What I do find interesting about these though is this red roof. If we just zoom in further, I mean in the 70s vinyl roof meant, you know, something a little bit special, and I presume this is a vinyl roof on here, but a colour matched red vinyl roof. That's certainly very unusual. And then we've got these what look like very unusual wheel trims on there as well. Anyway, let's have a look at the text and see if we can learn a bit more about these. So it heads this off by saying Statesman, Australia's world-class car, and it jumps in straight away talking about the Statesman Caprice, the car pictured, and what seemingly is the top of the range of the top of the range. So the Statesman Caprice has gained in only a few years an enviable position amongst world-class cars, with nearly every luxury feature built in, including many not available at any price on other luxury cars. Statesman Caprice luxury appointments include genuine leather seat facings, integral air conditioning, stereo cassette player, power windows, 4-wheel power disc brakes, 5-litre power plant, and the smooth responsiveness of turbo hydromatic transmission. and in the driving you will immediately appreciate the fine handling and safety of Holden's radial tune suspension. We believe that no matter what qualities you seek in a luxury car, you'll find them in Statesman Caprice. And then it starts talking about a lower spec model called the Statesman DeVille. Now looking at the range, and we'll look at it in a moment, they would look like there was 3 models. So the DeVille was the base model of the Statesman. Then we have one called the SLE sedan. Doesn't mention it here in the notes at all, but that was like your middle model. And then the range topper Caprice, which we've just looked at. So the DeVille, there are many good reasons why so many people choose Statesman DeVille. Some move to DeVille as the best luxury car in its class. Others choose DeVille for the matchless performance of its 5-litre engine and turbo hydromatic transmission. It seems like that was the only choice actually on the Statesman. It's responsive overtaking and easy cruising in any terrain. The extra reserves of power for towing a caravan, camper or boat. And there's the quiet and effortless motoring on long drives and in city streets. Or the fine handling of radial tune suspension could make DeVille the natural choice for safer, more predictable handling on any road and in any weather. Whether your reasons, you'll enjoy a superb luxury car and one that assures excellent value as well. So you kind of like when you think about these big Australian cars, similar when you think about these big American cars as well, you kind of like think comfy but not too great at the handling. But I think they improved the handling on these with that radial tune suspension by the looks of it. Anyway, let's have a look at the specs. So I brought the Statesman there at the bottom under the specs, and you can see the 3 models: the DeVille sedan, SLE sedan, and that picture which was the Caprice sedan. All came with the 5-litre 8-cylinder 3-speed auto transmission. You can see much larger engine than that in the Premier, which was a 4.2, and the Kingswood had a 3.3, which was actually a 6-cylinder. Those little ticks to the right hand side of the Statesman there are just quite simply, the first tick is telling us it's got 4-wheel disc brakes, which is quite nice for 79, and then the second tick there is telling us it's got power steering, which I think you would need on a 5-litre, otherwise I'm sure it would be extremely heavy. But what's interesting, if we move to the dimensions, first number there, 75, is just, it's just telling us the fuel tank capacity, which is the same as the Kingswood and the Premier, as you can see. But what's interesting, the second one there is actually the wheelbase. So 2,895 millimeters. And if you look up the list there, that's the same wheelbase as the Premier wagon. So if you just look to the basic Kingswood, that was only 2,819, so a much bigger car as it happens. And certainly if you move on through them figures and look at the very last column, the one before it is just turning circle figures, but the very last column, that's actually the curb weight. And you notice the Statesman has got a huge curb weight when you compare it towards both the Premier sedan and wagon, and certainly much more than the Kingswood. In fact, much heavier than anything else in the Holden range. The DeVille is slightly lighter at 1,598 kilograms, but if you look at the higher spec models, the SLE and the Caprice, even heavier at 1,695 kilograms. Like I say, way heavier than anything else. So yeah, they put a 5-litre in there, but possibly it needed that 5-litre because it was a pretty hefty big land yacht, really, wasn't it? But certainly a very interesting car. Just wondering, was it as good as it looks? Obviously I need people from Australia and New Zealand to tell me if they have any experience of these. Were they a good vehicle overall? And certainly today, I mean, I would happily own one of these today if I could afford the what would be very poor fuel economy, I'm sure, but certainly an interesting car, and kind of like a reminder that these big, huge cars with the big 5-litre engines, sadly, no longer even considered today, really. I kind of like when I'm speaking, I've just quite noticed something. I quite like this, actually. That interesting little gold, I presume it's a tape stripe. I would imagine it's not painted on there. Maybe it was, I don't know. But a little bit of a gold stripe that goes around and then through the bonnet there. Very interesting. So it looks a very luxurious car for its time. So there we go. That is the end of this particular Holden brochure for August 1979, as you can see at the bottom there. Very interesting range at the time, and I think this is like an interesting period of time. And certainly if you look at the smallest car in the range, that Gemini, and then you look at these huge Statesmen, you kind of like think they don't really relate too much to each other, really, do they? But of course that radial tune suspension seems to be mentioned throughout this brochure. But overall, thank you so much for watching another episode of Quarterlight, your car brochure channel. I'm just wondering which particular Holden you would have chosen, looking back in time now, knowing, particularly talking to you all those in Australia, New Zealand, knowing if there were particularly poor cars or great cars. I wonder which car you would have chosen. I wonder if that would differ from when you was actually there in 79 and didn't really know which car was going to hold up the best. Would it have been the Commodores with their very much European styling, the much maligned Sunbird with that Starfire 4 engine, the HZ Holdens, the Kingswood, and of course the Premier sedan and wagon. I do quite like that wagon. I don't know why I'm so obsessed with wagons, but I kind of prefer them to SUVs, and I don't know why. Anyway, or would you pick the baby of the family, the Gemini, in again either sedan or station wagon form? Maybe you was feeling a bit frugal, but from what I hear they weren't bad little cars. Or would you have gone a little bit out there and picked a Holden Sandman and give it a fantastic piece of artwork on the side? We can even get Kingswood Utilities. Quite a nice little ute, actually, I think that. Or would you have indeed splashed out? Would you have gone crazy and splashed out on the Statesman? But anyway, thank you for watching. If you've not done already, please do consider subscribing. It is completely free. Helps both the channel and helps you find the episodes that you really want to see. Finally, please do take care. We'll see you very soon, and goodbye.